Hi, art historians. I really like the approach of recording here in the school building and avoiding the interruptions from my fluffy roommates, so I'm going to continue to do so for as many of these as I can. It is very difficult living in a one bedroom with so many creatures, also included in the lease. But anyway, we are moving on to Module 7, Native North Americas Part 1, and the American Colonies. So this is the Indigenous Americas 2, 7.01. We are in the Art of Eastern and Northwestern Nations. And for this unit, we have 7 core works and 4 supplemental works. And we really are looking at a large date range for the Eastern and Northwestern nations from around 10,000 BCE through the 16th century up to European contact. Then we have the 19th century forcible relocations and even through some traditions that are still being utilized today. So for location, for our eastern nations, it also includes the Iroquois Confederacy, which is the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, Senecas, and Tuscaroras, Tuscaroras. We have the Cherokees over in North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee, the Choctaws in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. We have the Chickasaws in Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, the Creeks in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, the Seminoles in Florida and Georgia, the Great Huron Lakes, and the Algonquin in Canada, as well as the Powhatans in Virginia and the Pequots in Connecticut. Now, the Northwestern, we have the Haida and Tlingit in Alaska. We have the Kwakwaka'wakws and the Nisagaga and the Coast Salish in the British Columbia. We've got the Nez and Percy in Oregon, and then we have the Yakima and Spokane in Washington State, Gitxsan and Nuu-chah-nulth as well as Tanagan and Stowe in Canada. Apologies again for my pronunciation, doing my darn best, though it may not seem like it. So our works of art are all mostly small. So we are looking at an Anishinaabe outfit. We have for the eastern nations. We have a bandolier bag from the eastern. We've got totem poles from Northwestern, our transformation mask from Northwestern, North Wind mask from Northwestern, a ceremonial belt from Northwestern, and the Chilkat robes from Northwestern. Our supplemental works include another shoulder bag, a proud raven totem pole, another totem pole, and another totem pole by a couple of different other nations. So let's talk a little bit about what Eastern and Northwestern nations really are encompassing in regards to their culture and art. The Eastern nations demonstrate evidence of very complex societies with earlier settlements demonstrating hunter-gatherer groups that later evolve into those agricultural communities. Construction of earthworks and these burial mounds were for ceremony and political centers of gathering, for rich traditions of storytelling that were practiced regularly with very clear intentions of preserving history, spirituality, as well as these moral lessons to be passed down from generation to generation. The development of pottery and weaving and beadwork leads to very intricate designs and often featured symbolism. The Eastern nations are known for their very strong connection to nature, with many tribes practicing animism, as they see the natural world as inhabited by spirits. The use of wampum beads from shells was very popular for trade in these nations, as well as storytelling and ceremonies, and the formation of the Confederacy strongly influenced more democratic principles, and there is now also a push for contemporary movements to revive and promote traditional art forms, languages, as well as cultural practices in the Eastern nations. Now, the Northwestern nations were also incredibly dependent on fishing, especially salmon, and there was a push for the development of very intricate fishing technologies as well as practices. The carvings of totem poles as a cultural and spiritual symbol was incredibly popular in the Northwest, as it represented clans, stories, and lineage. The Northwestern nations are also renowned for exquisite basketry. They often make it from cedar bark and a couple of other different types of natural materials, and they're usually used for storage or for ceremonial functions. Now, the potlatch ceremony itself is an extremely important cultural aspect that includes the storytelling as well as the redistribution of wealth to reinforce social hierarchies and community bonds. Art imagery in the Northwestern nations often depict animals with ancestral spirits, as mentioned similarly for the practices of culture. We are looking at the deep-rooted traditions emphasizing sustainable practices as well as the respect for land and sea. Now, ongoing efforts to revitalize languages, art forms, and traditions in response to colonial impacts are incredibly important, and Native artists of the Northwestern nations have gained recognition in contemporary art scenes for their blending of traditional themes with their modern techniques. Now, generally speaking, the Eastern and Northwestern nations have shown remarkable adaptability to their changing environments, and as well as external pressures, as the interactions among the tribes have led to an exchange of ideas, technologies, and art forms across the regions. Now, of course, there are various issues within these groups face, like land rights, cultural preservation, and identity amid the globalization and very intense and deeply rooted historical trauma. Continued practices of traditional ceremonies and festivals affirm these identities and community ties, but both groups really truly demonstrate very rich histories with the emphasis of ongoing practice of tradition, which is pretty awesome because we don't want to lose any of those techniques either. So that is the first unit for Module 7, and I will see you again for the second half. Bye, everyone!